Susan McLucas, and I run the bicycle riding school in Somerville, Massachusetts, where over the last 30+ years, we've taught about 4,000 people how to ride bicycles. Riding a bicycle is a basic skill in a lot of people's thinking. If they don't know how to ride, many people feel like there's something wrong with them. They're embarrassed and ashamed, and they feel left out. So when they learn to ride, it's a great relief and a feeling of accomplishment. One of the things I really love about this work is how much it means to my students getting over a decades-long problem. In a few short hours, and sometimes in a few short moments, someone goes from not knowing how to ride a bike to being a proud bicycle rider. About half of my students come from other countries. More than half of them are women. And I also teach kids. Left, left, left. Follow those feet. Our air is polluted, and cars are one of the main causes of that. Pollution contributes to global warming, which threatens life on Earth. Cars take up a lot of space in cities, and many people die in car accidents. Cars separate people in their own little spaces. When people ride bikes, they're more open to their surroundings. They get exercise so they stay healthy, and they also keep other people healthy by not polluting. Besides, bicycle riding is a lot of fun. About 6% of Americans don't know how to ride bikes. 6% for women and 5% for men. But I have about 80% women at my bike school. I'm guessing this is because women are more willing to accept help and admit that they don't know how to do something. I've been a bicycle mechanic since the early 80s. I was happy to be part of the bicycle community because I love bikes and hate cars. But being a mechanic was not really a passion for me. It was the idea of fighting the car culture and saving the planet that really inspired me. Most of my students come from the Boston area, but I have a few people each year who fly in from out of town.
I started out teaching people one-on-one, and it's nice that way. We tell each other our whole life stories and we bond, and it works.
But actually, group classes are fun in a different way. It's reassuring to people to learn with others in the same position. If you love bicycles and you love teaching, and you live in a town where there's not a bike school already, I really recommend that you start one. You'd be surprised how many people could use your help. It's such a pleasure seeing one person after the other discover the joy and empowerment of riding a bicycle. The more people that ride bikes, the more likely we are to save the world for future generations, and the more people will enjoy the freedom and pleasure of bicycle riding. In this section, we're going to talk about choosing a bicycle to learn on. A good bike to learn on has upright handlebars, and you want to have the seat down nice and low. A comfort hybrid is a good thing to ask for if you're going to the store. You want to have the seat nice and low so you can get on, put your feet on the ground, and have a little gentle bend in your knee. You don't want to be tottering up there somewhere scared. So this way, you start to fall over, you just catch yourself. No big deal. On my fleet, I have padded pedals, but the pedals will be off when you're just starting to learn, so you'll be okay. So the handlebars want to be nice and high, so you're not leaning over much. You're pretty much sitting straight up. Here you can feel nice and comfortable, catch yourself if you start to fall. You don't have to, but it's nice to learn on open frame bikes, sometimes called women, but I consider them just open frame. If you start to fall, you can half fall and catch yourself and you're fine. Otherwise, if there's a top tube here, whatever you do that's not good, you feel it. A bike that you do not want to learn on is something like this, a racing bike with dropped handlebars. You do not want to be leaning over when you're learning how to ride a bike. So this is good for going fast across France, but not for learning how to ride. Another bike you do not want to learn on is a mountain bike. It's got straight across handlebars, which means you're leaning over quite a bit. We don't like to lean over to learn to ride. You want to be nice and upright. Once you can ride, you can decide.
Now let's look at some smaller bikes.
This Specialized Hot Rock is a nice learning bike now that I've modified it. I put these handlebars on because it came with leaning over handlebars. For some reason, bike companies seem to think that any big kid or really short adult wants to lean over, which is not the case.
So this little red here is only good because I put the handlebars on. And same with Mr. Gears here. It's a specialized hot rock. The 20-inch wheels with the 11-inch frame comes leaning over. So I just put a stem riser on here. And this is a nice bike in my teaching fleet. Now it's funny, just 1 inch shorter in the frame, the 10-inch frame with the 20-inch wheels, the same bike, they call it specialized hot rock, although it's totally different between the 10 and the 11-inch frame, is a nice, comfortable one for riding. This is a real workhorse in my fleet, Red Rover here. And this Trek Jet is also a very comfortable bike for learning how to ride. Blueberry is one of my oldest teaching bikes, and everybody loves Blueberry. Nice and upright. In kids' bikes, they don't really make open frames, but people manage. And for the little ones, the 4 and 5-year-olds, or the really short kids, this Woom is a nice option, but something with a high handlebars, low seat. This is a really comfy bike. I've got the pedals off here, like I start everybody, and I even have crank pads to make it easier to not hit your legs or not hurt if you hit your legs on the cranks. So your ideal bike for learning has high handlebars, a low seat, an open frame, and we'll take the pedals off before you start.
Now we're going to talk about safety gear.
First thing to put on when you want to go biking is a helmet. That's the first thing we give people when they come here to learn how to ride, and they should wear it all through their biking career. It's also kind of nice to have gloves, knee pads, and elbow pads. Most of my students let the pads go when they graduate from bike school, but I recommend that my elderly students keep the elbow pads and knee pads and just make it all the safer. And anybody who's especially nervous, there's nothing wrong with wearing knee pads and elbow pads when you're riding a bike. If it gives you that feeling of security that you need, so be it. In this chapter, we're going to talk about setting up the bike to learn on. We want to adjust the seat so that your feet are nice and flat on the ground. You can even have a little bend in your legs. You'll put it up later, but to begin with, you want it nice and low. So to get the seat the height that you want, loosen the bolt that's here, assuming it's a regular bolt. This one needs an alien wrench. Once you get it loose, you twist the seat, and it should be able to move around. So if you wanted to lower it, it'd be like that. Then you tighten it back up.
You might just need a regular wrench.
A lot of bikes make it easy for us to change the seat height by having a quick release where the seat post goes in. So these are made to push in and get tight, and then you just open them out and it gets loose. So you put the seat wherever you want it, and then you push it in with the cup toward the inside.
If it feels like it goes in really easily, you would tighten it up, the two sides together.
And if it felt like you couldn't even push it in, you'd loosen it up a little bit, and then you want it so that it pushes in securely, and that'll hold your seat wherever you need it. This is a good thing to have as you're learning. You will be wanting to change your seat height as you go, so it's nice to have a quick release. But once you're all set, you can have a regular bolt, and you'll probably be leaving the seat where it is, so you don't need a quick release. First, we'll remove the pedals to learn how to glide, which we'll talk more about later. It's much easier to start out when you don't have the pedals getting in your way. To get the pedals off, you put a wrench right in here where the pedal goes into the crank, and on the right side, you screw it off the way that you would any old mayonnaise jar, counterclockwise. Over here on the left, you have to turn the way you would think would be tightening it up, and it's actually loosening it up. That is clockwise. Lots of times the pedals the flat here is too narrow for a regular adjustable wrench, in which case you need a pedal wrench, which most people don't have. But if you go into a bike store, they'll be happy to help you get your pedals off. We get to get our balance first, and then once you have your balance, then we worry about pedals. In this section, we're going to talk about getting your balance. To get your balance, you have to push off and then turn the way that you're leaning. You don't want to go straight. You want to see which way the bike leans or which foot of yours wants to go down, and whichever one it is, you turn the bike that way. So you lean to the right, you turn right. You lean to the left, you turn left. And I mean really turn, not just turn a little bit, but really, really turn all over the place. And the reason you need to do that is because you're leaning off to the side, so your body is here and your bicycle is not under you. So if you turn in the way you're leaning, that gets the bicycle back under you. And then lots of times you'll go too far and you have to go the other way. So you're always going back and forth, but you're trying to get the bicycle under you. And eventually, you'll still be doing lots of little back and forth. You'll never be quite straight, but your corrections will be so small you won't even notice them.
Perfect.
Don't look down, look forward while you're trying to get your balance.
It's very important to find the right location for learning to ride.
You need a broad, paved, gently sloping place, ideally. If you're working with somebody else, if you're one-on-one, the slope is optional. You can just walk along and push somebody. But the best thing is if you have a gentle slope. If it's too much of a slope, it's scary, and they'll always be having to use their brakes. But just a little tiny slope. Sometimes when I tell people we're going to go to the top of the hill, they say, "What hill?" It's such a gentle slope, but it's enough to keep people going. Think about the brakes a lot in the early part. As soon as you can go anywhere at all, it's very important to practice stopping and slowing down. If you just put them on a little bit, you'll slow down. Then you put them on all the way, that'll stop you.
The right lever controls the rear brake, and the left lever controls the front. See how it squeezes and just stops you by pushing on the rim there. The front brake is more important than the back brake. When you put them both on, that's the one that slows you down most. But don't get thinking, the front brake is really good, maybe I'll just use it by itself. Think, if your front wheel stops suddenly and your back wheel is still going, and especially if you're leaning over in a sort of a racing kind of a bike, but even so, the back wheel can come up and over, and it's a bad thing. Don't at all get afraid of the brakes so that you don't want to use them, thinking of that, but don't ever use the front brake by itself. If you just get in the habit of always using the two brakes together, that's the simplest thing. You don't have to worry about it. So, how's it feel? I bet. If you don't have a hill, you just walk along pushing the person from the small of their back. Don't hold the seat or the student. Just keep them going.
And you're not running beside the person, you're going regular walking speed. Whichever way the bike leans, you turn. The bike leans right, you turn right. The bike leans left, you turn left. If one foot goes down, you turn that way. That was long! Woo! That was great!
We use the same techniques for children, but for those who need a little extra reassurance, we sometimes use a harness so that we can give them a little gentle pull up, and then if they start to fall, we catch them.
Yeehaw! In this section, we're going to talk about learning how to pedal. When you can go a long way with your feet off the ground, you can put your pedals on. But remember that your right pedal goes in the right way that you would expect it to, that is, clockwise, and the left pedal goes in the way you would not expect it to, counterclockwise.
Now you want to raise the seat a little bit, maybe an inch or less for a kid.
When you get the pedals on, the first thing you want to do, especially with our experience of having the pedals off and reaching straight for the ground, try to put in your mind things are really different now. You have to watch out for the pedals. They're going to get you in the legs if you're not careful. So you need to reach for the ground in a different way. Notice how they go around backwards and nothing happens.
So that's how you get the pedals where you want them to start out. Push off a little bit, then just get your balance. And if you're feeling on a good balance stretch, then put your second foot on. But the thing to keep in mind when you're going downhill, you'll get your feet on the pedals, but you don't need to pedal unless you're going too slow. Do a lot of just getting your feet on the pedals and saying, hey, great, I'm riding, because coasting is part of the thing. When you can get pedaling, you want to just follow the bike for quite a while. Try to do circles in one direction, circles in the other direction. You'll find that gradually the bike will just start going where you want it to. I don't know how this happens, but I know that if you follow the bike, it will return the favor and start going where you want it to go. Woohoo! Once you're riding around pretty comfortably, you can start thinking about gears. Gears determine how far you go for a pedal stroke. In a high gear, you go a long way for a pedal stroke, and in a low gear, you go a short way, which means that it's easier. You don't have to push as hard, faster and looser in a low gear. So the reason that we want gears is because sometimes we're going uphill, sometimes we're going down. Otherwise, if we're always on the flat, we just stay in one gear. But when you come to a hill, you're going up, it's hard. So you want to make it easier, so you're willing to sacrifice how far you go for a pedal stroke to at least have your feet be able to move. So a lower gear will make it easier to pedal. And then when you're going back down the hill, you go into a higher gear so that your feet aren't just like totally fast and loose. So you're always just looking for a comfortable amount of resistance. You want it to be possible to pedal, but not too easy. So most of the time you do your shifting on the right, which is changing where the chain is on the back, on the freewheel. But if you want to make really big changes, you change it on the left. You've got 3 chain rings up here. Most of the time you want to be in 2. That's your medium range, going from 1 to 7 on the back, or whatever it is, however many gears you have back there. But if you want to be in a really low gear, you're in a really steep hill, you put it in 1 over here, and then 1 over here is just your lowest altogether. And if you really want to go fast down a hill for some reason, which I do not recommend, you put it in 3 here and 7 there, and then whew, you can really get going. You go a long way for each pedal stroke. When you're going up a hill, you want to pull it towards you, like this. And going back downhill, you pull it back away from you. And the chain is changing places back here. The chain on the biggest cog, that's your lowest gear for climbing a hill. And then back into high gear. You have to have the chain moving to make it shift. And actually something like a little bit faster than once a second is how fast you want to have your feet going around. And if you're riding with people and you see that everybody's feet are going around a lot faster than yours, you might say, maybe I should go for lower gear. But find what works for you. So for general riding, you're not going up a hill, you're not going down a hill. I would have your gears on 2 on the left and something toward the top, 6, 6 or 7, or 5 if you like a little easier feeling, but something toward the top on the right-hand side. Most of my fleet has twist grips, but now we're going to show a different kind of shifting. I'm coming down. I want kind of a higher gear. Here we go. Oh, that feels pretty comfy. So I'm in high gear for going down. Clicking this thing here. And what the heck, we'll go all the way. Nobody coming. Oh, good. So here I am going up a hill. 6, 5. This seems pretty comfy. Could even go a little lower. 4, 3. Ah, the hill's getting pretty steep here. 2. 1. So this is my lowest gear without using the left, but actually, there we go. Now I'm in my very lowest gear. I'm even in the low on the left. So this is the lowest gear all together. Now I'll put the left back into the usual spot and go higher for going down hills. But don't worry too much about what gear you're in exactly. Just be sure it's comfortable for you. Not too hard, not too easy. Now we'll talk about some of the tricks I show my new students. Once you can ride around and you can go kind of where you want to in a general way, then it's good to practice standing up off the seat. That's good for going over a bump, or if you wanted to ride right through a pothole or over a curb or something. To start standing up, you want to be coasting with one foot up and one foot down, and then just take a little weight off your seat. If that feels okay, go ahead and stand up with your weight on your bottom foot. So do it little by little. First just a little bit, and if that works, then you just stand up. Same thing with the looking around. You do it little by little. Okay, I can look to the side, that's not a problem. I can look almost back. Hey, I can look all the way back. And then, same thing with taking a hand off. First, just loosen your non-dominant hand. Then take it off a tiny bit, and then if you can go a long way with it off a tiny bit, then you can start waving to your fans. Before you go out on the street, you need to learn how to make signals. Most of the signals you do with your left hand. This is I'm going left. This is I'm going right, kind of like you're pointing over that way. And this means I'm going to stop or slow down. And you can also do your right signal with your right hand if you want. We're showing this on a street, and this is where you would use all these things a lot of the time. But if you're trying for this for the first time, you would want to do it back in the schoolyard or big open space where you learn to ride. When you can control the bike well enough to stay within a 5 or 6 foot path in the open area, you'll know you're ready to go out onto the real bike path. So when you're first starting to ride on the bike path, you want to just make everything as low stress as possible. Anytime you have any doubts about anything, just stop. When you start out, that's the most wobbly time. So you want to start out when no one is about to pass you here, no one is whizzing by. So just look ahead, look over your shoulder even. If it's nice and clear, you start. Really, there is no harm in stopping whenever you are not quite sure, somebody seems a little close, you're a little flustered, just stop. Here we're coming up to a little road. We'll just stop and check out the situation. Not usually a lot of traffic here, but we want to be sure. So I'm just going to put my foot down very lightly and look, everything is clear. Okay, here we go. Okay, we want to pass this pedestrian. So I look forward and I see that the path is all clear ahead of me for a long way, but now I've got to look back because a fast biker could be passing me at the same moment. And I go around her with plenty of room and everybody's safe. It probably will be a while before you're passing bikers, but if you come across a really slow biker or once you get to be a good fast biker, you may pass a biker and you do the same thing. You have to, look forward, look back, and you go around. And you should always say, passing on your left. It's almost always the left. But some people like to say passing on your left to any pedestrians they pass, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you'll have a pedestrian in front of you that's kind of hogging the lane, hogging the path. They're out of their lane, a little bit into the left lane. And you can say something like, "Excuse me, on your left." But don't just barrel on by, assuming they're gonna hear you and respond. See what happens. A lot of times when you want to pass somebody, there's no room. If you wanted to pass a pedestrian and there was someone coming from the other way, don't tell yourself, "Oh, he's over here, she's over there, I think I have room." No,
As a new biker, you want to have the whole left lane clear, and you go way out there and there's no questions. No squeezing between people, please.
Sometimes you might just have to stop.
Okay, we have a pedestrian up in front, and I think the curve is far enough away that I can see, so I look back and it looks good, so I'm going around, and I gave him plenty of room. Most of the bike path has the ground beside it pretty level, so you don't have to worry if you go on or off. But here you've got a little lip. It sort of goes down a bit, so if you were to try to ride right back on, your wheel might get caught. So if you go off the road and you notice it going down, just get off your bike and walk it back on. Let's talk about seat height. When you start out getting your balance, you want to be seated with your feet flat on the ground and even a little bend. And then when you get pedaling, you put the seat up so that you're flat-footed but with straight legs. And then when you get pretty good, you get your heels off the ground a little bit. I usually graduate people about here, where they can get the balls of the feet down, but their heels are all the way off. Good bikers say that's much too low, and if you do start going 20 miles a day, you have to get your seat higher. So the ideal place if you're a really good rider and you're going long distances, you want to have your leg practically straight at the bottom of your stroke. I ride a little bit low, so my bend is a little bit more than a tiny bit, but something like this is about ideal. And but you can't get on and off like we're used to from beginning bike school. So let me show you how good riders get on. They stand in front of the seat like this and just step down and sit down once they're going. Here's how they get off. They stand up, they take their top foot off and step down. So you see you're not on the seat anymore. If you were to stay on the seat and just reach down with your seat up at the standard height, there'd be no ground there and you'd fall over unless you managed to jump off. So you should do what's right for you. If you're comfortable with that maneuver of getting on like this and off like this, then you can have your seat up at the standard height. And it's more comfortable for your knees and it's better for your knees. But if you get into a fumbling situation, it's not quite as good. So if you decide you're ready for standard height and you want to put your seat up, do a couple of long rides where you don't have your seat that high, but you pretend you do. So you always get on like this and off like this. And when you can do that reliably, then you can set your seat high up. And when you're buying a bike, don't let people browbeat you into having your seat higher than you want. If they tell you your leg has to be almost straight, you tell them you're a new rider and you want to be comfortable, and your bike teacher told you you should have the balls of your feet on the ground. But tell them you'll put the seat up later so they don't have nightmares. So you want to make it comfortable for you, not what the people in the bike store say. Many of my students say they never intend to ride on streets, and that's fine. Riding on bike paths is a really fun and healthy thing to do. But for those who are so inspired, biking on streets is a great way to get around. You want to get plenty of practice on bike paths before you even think about going out onto the streets.
But when you can really go wherever you want and you don't have any close calls, then you can try the streets.
The things to think about when you're on the street are just going as straight as you can. It's never going to be perfectly straight. Bicycling is a little bit of a wobbly business. Very often there are parked cars in the cities, and so you want to be far enough away from the parked cars that if somebody opens the door unexpectedly, you're out here. You might be surprised, but you don't get doored, as they say. If you're going along pretty fast and someone opens the door and you run into it,
you can be head over heels, which is not a good thing. So ride out there. It feels a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes, but that's where people are supposed to ride.
And they have these little things on the road they call sharrows that tell the bikes where to be, and also tell the cars where the bikes should be, so that the cars don't get mad at the bikes if they're a little bit out farther than they might wish. It's really nice that a lot of towns are giving us these bike lanes to show the bikes where to go and show the cars that the bikes are part of traffic, but they're often a little too close here. I like to ride toward the left side of the bike lane, because if you're in the middle or on the right side, you're right in the car door area where the car doors would open up. So here we are riding kind of on the left side of the bike lane. See how close that bike lane is to the cars? We don't like that.
So you bike along in your pretty straight line, thinking where would the car doors come if they opened up, and staying outside of that space.
So here I am, riding outside the car door spaces, riding outside the doors. Hello.
It's a biker's job to ride far enough out that they don't get doored, but car drivers can help bikers by using the Dutch reach, where you reach around and that reminds you to look in your mirror and behind. And here I see a biker, so I just stay here for a minute. So now I get out.
The only time you might ever go into a little space between parked cars would be if you had a car waiting behind you on a narrow street, in which case you would have to stay there until you could look back and be sure you had plenty of room to go back out onto the street. Or when you have a really long space with no cars parked. This space is long enough I can't resist it.
So we'll tuck in away from the traffic here. But I'll be sure to remember when I'm going out, I've got to look around as if I'm going out onto the street for the first time. But nice space here. Okay, I'm getting close to the cars parked. Oh, nobody's back there. Perfect. I can just come out. Sometimes I might just have to stop in the space if there were a car right there and they didn't have time to get used to the fact that I was there. So anytime you're riding around as a new rider and you feel like things are a little bit too much for you, you always have the option of just taking your bike off to the sidewalk and walking it. Don't ride on the sidewalk, at least unless there's nobody there. And if you decide to ride on the sidewalk, it's narrow and you have to look at each driveway crossing. But as soon as anybody comes along, just get off and walk. Pedestrians should not have to think about bikes on the sidewalk. And then in business districts around big squares like Harvard Square, Davis Square, it's actually against the law to ride on the sidewalk.
Anytime you want to change lanes, you want a signal.
Okay, I want to turn left up here. I'll just hang out a little bit here and I'll wait for there's some space coming the other way. Okay, after these guys are gone, looks like a pretty nice space. So here I go. You can always hover over to the right if you're not quite sure if you can go. Then wait for a nice big space. Left turns are a little tricky, especially as a new rider. So if it seems like there's just too much going on, you can always just become a pedestrian and walk across. So I'm coming to a crosswalk here. I'll see what the situation is. And it looks pretty clear on the other side. Oh, they're waiting for me. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. The cars in Arlington are very polite and respect the traffic rules. So they stopped for me and I walked over. But I was safe waiting there as long as I felt I needed to, till there was plenty of room for me to walk across.
When you've been riding on roads for a while, you'll probably want to start making left turns like more experienced riders do, where they look over their shoulder and move over to the left, and then when they have a space, they do their left turn.
Sometimes people will wave you across, they'll stop and want to let you go through, and that's nice, but sometimes people wave you across when they really don't have the big picture. You're the one who's putting your life on the line, going where they say you don't even know this person. So somebody waves you across, you take a few seconds to say, okay, is everything okay here? Great, then you can go across.
So we're riding in the bike lane, which is a very nice thing some cities give us. If we wanted to turn right here, we would move over out of the bike lane into the right turn lane, but we're going to keep straight. We always want to be as far right as we can be, but still that allows us to go where we want to go. So here we want to go straight. The right-hand lane is only turning right, so we stay out of that. And just continue on straight here. And the bike lane is painted in a way that reminds people of that. But even if there were not a bike lane here, if there's a right-hand lane and we're not going right, we ride to the left of that. So on a lot of city streets, there isn't really room to comfortably have a bike and a car pass each other. So when you feel it's like that, just ride out far enough that nobody would think about passing you.
Just take the lane. You know, don't keep somebody behind you for 3 blocks.
Oh, here's a nice little, I'm going to tuck into here, let the car around. Going to go around, guy. Oh, there are 2 of them. Okay, so I have to stop. And now I look back and we've got enough space, so I go back out.
Don't feel like the cars have a right to go just as fast as they might want to, and you've just got to do everything to stay out of their way. You're part of traffic, and you're actually doing a favor to the whole city.
Waiting behind a bike is part of traffic, and that's what cars have to do sometimes. Okay, we're coming to a rotary here. So I'll go most of the way around it and go off on Broadway there. Okay, we're coming in. I'm going to go toward the middle of the rotary. Thank you. Okay, the middle of the rotary here is a little like an eddy. I can just hang out here. If there's not a good time to go, I can just wait here and even stop if I have to. But it looks like there's not too much traffic here, so I'll just make my way across, make friends with these people here. Is he letting me go? Thank you. If I hadn't seen that guy was letting me go, I would have waited, but he waved me across, so I went.
If you don't feel comfortable riding in a rotary, just walk your bike.
There's a lot more that could be said about riding on roads, of course, but I hope this has been a useful introduction to some of the things to think about. We have a couple of links included below that will give you more tips and information. One is by Mass Bike and one is by the League of American Bicyclists.
It's a very simple story with me. I grew up in the Depression. There wasn't any money. The one time when I got up enough courage to ask my father, who'd been out of work for several years, can I have a bike? And he said, what are you and your sister's going to eat? And after that, I never asked again.
That was the end of that.
That was the end of that story. So then, college came and other things came, and I just never bought it. And now I think I've told you all the motivation here is my granddaughter who wants me to ride a bike with her. That's the motivation. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't, at this stage of the game. But she's an 8-year-old, beautiful blue eyes, She just looks at you and says, Grandpa, will you come riding the bike with me? What are you going to say?
Last year, I couldn't help Owen ride, so I said, well, let me just see if there's something called a bicycle school. And to my surprise, there was this bicycle school, which I was very excited about. And so today was Owen's first lesson, and I haven't been on a bike in 30 years, and Susan just very calmly was able to help me. My granddaughter Ariana says, well, Grandma, why don't you try? But Susan says, well, why don't you? And she just made me feel so comfortable that I found it really easy. And I think it's wonderful that there is a place that you can go and learn how to ride.
No, I didn't. We had one bike at home and all the boys monopolized it. So I didn't. Yeah, so the boys sort of taught themselves. And because we were many of us and one bike, there wasn't enough time for the girls. So all the boys learned how to do that. This is my first day on a bike. I have a 13-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. They ride their bikes, and I kept saying, I need to learn how to do this, and I can do it with them. Balancing was a little hard in the beginning, but I felt good after a while, after I got comfortable. And I stopped thinking about the bike, started enjoying myself, and it became easier. Yes. Yeah, the fact that I could, on the first day, I was able to balance. I mean, that surprised me presently. Yeah. And it's fun, just feeling the wind on my face. That was good.
I never learned how to ride a bike because I was very slow to do things physically, and my mother was very worried that I would get hurt sitting on the couch, let alone riding the bike. So I never learned how to ride a bike. And it's just, in my whole life, I tend not to orient to physical goals. You know, I couldn't skip when I was a kid. I don't run. When I see a ball coming, I duck. You know, I'm just not physically oriented, and I've always wanted to see what it is like to try for and achieve a physical goal rather than an intellectual goal. And I just wanted to see how it felt to ride a bike. And it's been wonderful. I don't think I'm going to be playing tennis or anything. Those balls, I see them coming, I just duck. Can't do it, you know? That's right. In this life, one happily settles for a lack of athletic medals. But I've fallen and faltered, my balance I've altered, and now I want bicycle pedals.
Yes! When I was 6, my parents bought me a bike. It was a Sweet Thunder pink Huffy dirt bike. And it was the only thing that my parents ever got me that all my friends had. They weren't the kind of people who would buy me something just because everybody else had it. And this one time, they spent more money than they would have on a bike for me to do this. And so my brother, who's 5 years older than me, he would have been 11, tried to teach me. And we were going along, and he let go of the seat. I fell over. The axle, or, you know, that's what it's called, right? Went into my ankle, and it was one of the worst cuts I ever had, and I was just bleeding, and after that I was too scared. And then people every year, every summer, everyone says, I'll teach you how to ride, I'll teach you how to ride. And every summer it doesn't happen. And every year I've been thinking, I wish there was a class I could take. Here's my opportunity. I finally get to do it. I'm just so happy. Yeah. I was feeling kind of embarrassed a little, walking with the helmet and the knee pads, walking the bike down the street. But, you know, once I got on and I started to find my balance, I was so glad that I came.
I rode a bike when I was a kid. I grew up in Ireland. My dad had one bicycle. There was 10 of us. And if we had an opportunity to steal the bike, I would steal the bike and go for a ride or do errands or whatever. And then I didn't ride for years and years. She tried to sign me up last year, but the class was full.
Did you?
And she kept reminding me, she kept reminding me, Mom, make sure you sign up next year, which is starting. And I did, so she was delighted.
That's cool.
So I'm planning on riding a bike with my daughters, and I'm trying to get my husband to ride also. So.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, so that's my goal. I guess once you ride once, you never forget.
Well, I was always afraid to do things. My husband and my son always ride the bike together, and I just don't join them. I never thought anyone could teach me. It's scary, you know. So when I saw it, I immediately jumped on it. The first time I saw that there is lessons for beginners. When I saw that I can stand while sitting, I immediately felt better.
Yeah.
Because my husband has these very, very tall bikes. So I thought, you're going to put me on one of those, and Like my husband did with my son. He basically put him on a bike and pushed him and down a hill, and he made it, you know. You think about making levels
Of the class? What do you mean?
like that you can continue with you forever and ever.
Riding on a bike can be a really wonderful way to get around. It's a great contribution to traffic. Your bike takes up a lot less room than a car. It makes less pollution. It makes you healthy and everybody else healthy. And the more bikes we have in the traffic flow, the better it is for all concerned.